Well, as I record this, we've just been told that we've got possibly another 5 weeks of lockdown, and we've already had 10 months of various states of lockdown. And so I've been thinking about some Bible characters that experienced some kind of lockdown, and of course, Noah springs to mind. And so I've been reading the story of Noah, and there's a lot there to teach us. I mean, it's very popular to tell children because of the animals and the boat and everything else, but there's a huge amount here to instruct us as well. And so we read in Genesis 6 that the Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race was, and that every inclination of the thoughts of his heart were evil from childhood. And it says that the Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. Now here we do not see a God who delights in judgment. We see a God whose heart is moved, and he's moved to do this act of judgment out of the sadness of his heart, really, not because he rejoices in it in any way. And the sadness was because only just a few chapters before, in Genesis 1, we see the creation described, and each day as God creates something new, he says he saw what he had made, and it was good. And of course, the pinnacle was mankind, male and female. And when he saw them, he said it was very good. So just a few centuries later, and here's God saying, I wish I'd never done it, wish I'd never made them. So it's very sad, really, that this had to happen. But so God told Noah to make an ark or a boat, and he told him exactly what materials to use and exactly the dimensions. But it was an act of faith, I think, on Noah's part to build a boat. And of course, there's been much speculation about the logistics of it all. You know, where did he put the giraffes, and how did they keep the fox away from the chickens? But I'm not going to talk any more about that, because really we're not told an awful lot. We're told what we do need to know, not what we don't need to know. So the size of the ark was given to us, 450 feet long, which is just over half the length of the Titanic. The Titanic had 10 decks, whereas the Ark only had 3. None of it was luxury accommodation with silver service, and it had only one door and only one window, and that was in the roof. Now, it says that the animals came to Noah. He didn't have to round them up or go looking for them or hunting them or anything like that. They just came to him. So whether in those days animals were more tame, we just don't know. But certainly they all survived in the ark for a long time. And they just came to Noah, and they went into the ark, in which there were lots of rooms, and some translations say it was nests. But when they were all in, it says that God shut the door. Isn't that extraordinary? God actually shut them in to this ark, which was secure, pitched inside and out with tar so that it wouldn't let the water in. And then they stayed in that ark for a long time. Now, interestingly, every boat that you ever see has a rudder, and the rudder is a very small part of the ship, and yet it steers the whole thing. And even the big luxury liners have a relatively small rudder with which the captain can actually steer the ship. This ark had no rudder, it couldn't be steered. It also had no sail, certainly no engine, so no means of propulsion. So it just bobbed about on the water at the mercy of the elements, and Noah and his crew had absolutely no control over it. Now, I don't know how you feel about the lockdown that we've been in. I think most of us have felt pretty out of control, really. It's become more burdensome, I think, as the months have gone on. And those few months of freedom we had in the summer seem very attractive looking back. But, you know, it's encouraging to see how much God was involved in the story of Noah. And it's reassuring to know that he is in control of our story as well. And that this tiny virus that can't be seen with the human eye, which has brought the whole world to its knees, is not out of the control of God. He knows about it. It was no surprise to him, and he doesn't make mistakes. So we have to trust him, whatever state of mind we are in or whatever state of heart. It was God who was moved at the time of Noah by the evil of the day. It was God who decided to bring about this act of judgment. And it was God who appointed Noah to achieve his purposes. And it was God who shut the door of the ark to save that family and keep those animals safe from judgment. Now, I don't know whether you know how long they were in the ark. I've worked it out. It was about 400 days, which is over 13 months. So if we were in this lockdown for 13 months, that would take us into the end of April, really. So let's hope it isn't 13 months for us, because Noah's lockdown was extremely serious. They couldn't get out. They couldn't go anywhere. So it says in the Bible that in the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the second month, on that day, all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heaven were opened, and the rain fell on earth for 40 days and 40 nights. So it wasn't just the rain. The water came up from beneath as well. And I think that by the time the world was flooded and the waters subsided, the earth would have been very different from when Noah went into the ark, from when he went out. And so the whole cosmic structure of the earth was changed. So in this terrible act of judgment, God actually destroyed everything that he had made, except for Noah and those animals in the ark. And the water covered the mountaintops to a depth of 20 feet. No survivors. So what really happens here? Well, in Genesis 1, verses 1 to 2, the Bible describes a similar state, really. It says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And it says, the earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. Now, before anything happened, before God created light even, the earth was covered in water and it was in pitch darkness. But the Spirit of God hovered over the face of the waters. And then God said, let there be light, and there was light. So the difference between that original statement that the earth was formless and void and in darkness, when Noah was in the ark, the earth became formless and void and covered in water, but the light was still there. The light of the glory of God still shone over the earth. And the darkness, which equates to a complete absence of light, was not reintroduced. The light was there. So that's the grace of God, isn't it? That the light continued to shine. And however dark you may be feeling at the moment, and however in despair you may be, the light of Christ is still shining. And if you're trusting in Jesus, it should be shining in your heart as well. And so that gives us hope, doesn't it? And so the glory of God's presence lighting the world is still with us today. And God, by his grace, has never withdrawn it. Indeed, as John's Gospel puts it, in Jesus was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not understood it. But if you remember that when Jesus hung on the cross, we are told that darkness covered the land from the 6th hour to the 9th hour. So for 3 hours there was darkness, as in the complete absence of light, as Jesus suffered the wrath of God. The same darkness that was there before light was created fell on Jesus, as God's presence was withdrawn and Jesus was abandoned by his Father. Now, the truth and the joy and the glory of that is that because Jesus suffered in the darkness, taking the punishment that we deserve, we can now believe in the promise that we will never be forsaken by God, because Jesus has been forsaken on our behalf. And so when Jesus says, I will never leave you and I will never forsake you, that is a true promise for us today. So when life seems dark and gloomy to you and you feel isolated and out of control, think of Noah and remember that Jesus is here with us today, and he'll be with you tomorrow, and each morning He gives you a nice, new, fresh bunch of mercies to see you through the day. So let's continue to live in faith in Jesus and in trust in him, and to enjoy his presence, and to not just cope with this lockdown, but find contentment in it, and look forward to the day when we can meet again and sing together and praise God together as we used to. And I'm sure it will happen before long. So may the Lord bless you today. Thank you.